Oh my god, so I really, really wanted to talk to you because I just finished watching Gargantia, the Verdurous planet.
Yes. Oh
Oh
my
my
God. I
god.
really did. I love that show. Uh, when you said that you had watched it when I saw it on your Twitter, I was like, oh my God, somebody else has watched it.
I know! Well, it's so funny because I went out of my way to look up stuff that was like hidden gems, secrets like anime that people should give a second watch. And it was on so many lists, I finally picked it up. And man, is that ever the truth? What a great little show.
It really was. I remember when it was first like coming out, I didn't watch it. I was like, oh, I don't know. Like it popped up on my Hulu account, which is where how I watched it. And I was like, you know what?
Oh,
I'm gonna give this a try. And then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna buy this because it's
it's
good.
the production values on it are so good. Like just the way it looks. I was really struck by that first episode. I mean, it basically looked like Ender's Game animated, and it has such a strong like color story and such strong designs. I loved all the mech designs in it right from the get go.
I did too. I was like, I was, and back then I would have told you that I'm not really a mech fan.
Oh,
It's
that totally.
which is so strange considering I love every iteration of Gundam there is.
It's so funny. I was chatting with one of my friends and I said, that new Witch from Mercury Gundam is good. And she was like, "You say that about every Gundam. You like Gundam. You should just say that. Just say that from
Yeah,
now on."
that's true. And so I just thought, I when you have older siblings and you get brought up on what they watch, you think, oh, do I really like this, or do I just like it because it used to be something I did with my siblings?
Right, like it
So
was always in the background or like you were always part of it just because it was there.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, I would never have claimed myself as a mech fan, and I never sought out like anything other than Gundam, which I understand is a mech show, but I never associated it in that genre for some reason. It just never
Yeah,
clicked
it's
for me. It was just something that I did with my brothers.
right, yeah, and Gundam is so funny because it's become such a mega thing. It almost feels like its own category. Like the next step
Yeah.
after liking Gundam is liking mecha anime, almost.
Yes, almost. And so when I was like just scrolling Hulu, I wasn't even actually looking for anime. That's not where Hulu is not where I go for anime. I was just scrolling it and I was like, you know what? It just popped out at me and I was like, and I didn't even realize, I guess I must have not have read the description. I guess I must have just hit play because it didn't even dawn on me until it was starting that this was going to be a mix show.
Oh,
Like, oh,
yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah. They
that's
the forefront of it are the character designs, and I'm like, man, that looks cool, and people would mention it in passing, and I'd go, oh yeah, I guess that was a show. I don't really know anything about it, and after watching it now, I'm like, man, if you're a mecha fan, if you're a fan of like fish out of water stories, if you're a fan about like just philosophizing about the nature of war, like you have to check this show out.
yeah. You do, and it's so strange. Um, because I was like, after you said, "Hey, let's talk about it," I was like, "Oh, let me go through and a little bit of a refresher." And you know what? Nothing ever really left me. Like since that first watch, it just left such an impression on me. And like really, while the mech designs are really good, I always just really, 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 really loved the character designs of like the actual um humanoid characters, not
Yeah,
your mech
just
characters, because these ones the mech that's on the picture, that's like when you're looking at any
oh
anime
yeah,
site and it shows you that picture,
yeah, it shows
that
you
mech
Chamber.
doesn't really, it doesn't, Chamber does not look like a mech at all. So, and I think that's what deceived me. I thought they were on the ocean in a submarine. That's what I was like. Oh, okay, this is going to be like an
Oh,
ocean thing.
and it totally is on top of that.
That exactly. I was like, woohoo! I got what I wanted when I clicked play, but I had that bonus too.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's like it's totally a story about like mech and mech heads and stuff like that, and just the way Leto, the main character, is like this pilot and he's part of this giant war, and
Yeah.
it's that story of him like being out in space, and what's so interesting is he's, you know, it's very black and white. There's like this red purple star sky. It's nothing like its initial images,
Yeah.
but that totally leads into him, like, you know, basically first episode he falls out of the sky after a battle and ends up on a planet with humans, and as far as he knows there aren't humans. So it was like super bizarre to him, and then after that every surprise keeps coming out. Like this has a really good pace of surprises. Like not only are there humans, you're on Earth, buddy. Like you thought that was destroyed.
Yeah. They're like, welcome to Earth.
It's a little different here.
You're the one with the weird language.
Oh yeah, and I love how that plays into it, because he's so dependent on Chamber, which is his mech, for everything. Like, you know, orientating
Yes.
himself, figuring out the
Yeah.
language, all the steps of like how do I interact with other humans. Like it really is a show about humanity, like the way he kind of grows out of being in that soldier mindset to, oh my god, this is what it's like to be a human, you know?
Exactly.
Like
To the point where you like you can honestly, like, if you were trying to describe the show to somebody, Chamber is a character in and of itself, but you would honestly think that it was Chamber that was the human trying to educate.
oh,
Um,
absolutely, because
Lito.
he, as Leto is learning about the world, Chamber is also watching and assessing the world and coming to his own conclusions. So much so that they have conversations about what they should do next or what the right human move is. Like he really is
Yes,
his own character.
yes, and it was just it's just even in that very first episode, like Chambers like, I woke you up because this is what's going on outside. I don't know what you want to do.
I know that first episode is great where they're like bashing on him with pipes and wrenches trying to open the mech, and Chambers like, "Hey buddy, there's a lot of like humans outside. We should figure this out."
Like we knew all the humans.
Yeah, like we need to figure this out in this whole
Uh,
situation. It's such a show about growth. Like just watching Leto like bring down his walls and learn to interact again was so interesting, because from the first episode he's told that like, oh, you get to go back to the home base after this battle, and Leto has like his vital signs show that he's not excited at all, and even Chambers
yeah,
like, you don't have the right reaction for this. But through dealing with people on Earth and on the Gargantua, which is like this series of ships that are all linked together, because it's kind of Earth kind of becomes Waterworld essentially.
well, Waterworld, yeah,
And through being on there, he kind of learns how to be human. And some of the best moments in the show are just like he cries the first time he hears music. Like that was such a good moment. That was such a good sum up of like, oh right, kind of reconnecting to being human.
yeah, and that's a like, you know, I this is gonna sound so weird, but what draws anime to me to where it's grown with me even as I get older is the fact of how like a lot of real world stuff and real world things that people go through just get put into anime and just blown out of like proportions, usually like set in like this drastic proportion, um just to make it exciting to television. But
Totally,
when you peel
totally.
back when you peel back those layers, because when he cried over hearing music for the first time, you and I probably wouldn't even understand, just because we get to listen to music whenever we want. But to
Right.
think about somebody who, you know, is deprived of that, it's like you're like, wow, okay. I mean, I can't fault him for crying,
Yeah,
but
no, it was such a good moment exactly for those reasons.
yeah, yeah. And those are the type of shows that I get attracted to, like that stay with me, because I consume a lot of anime in a year, and some of it sticks with me and some of it doesn't. You know, you have those silly, that was fun to watch. It didn't really leave a lasting impression,
Oh,
but you don't hate that you
yeah.
spent time with it.
Totally,
But
totally.
this show really did stick with me, like to the point of I didn't hear anybody else talking about it but it seemed like something that everybody should be talking about.
Yeah, and I didn't look into like what was going on with its development or release or anything. It's actually based on a manga called Oceanus, but I didn't even look into that. I'm curious why this wasn't a bigger hit because it feels
Yeah,
so human. Like for the same reasons you were describing, it really puts into perspective like what we have in our lives and what Leto did not have by being so focused on being a soldier, so focused on a purpose that he didn't have anything else in his life. I think there's a good lesson
yeah.
in that.
There definitely is a good lesson in that, and even if you want to come away with the most basic lesson of taking things for granted, because I mean, Leto didn't even really have friendships. I mean, Amy's his first real friend aside from Chamber. But you know,
Yeah, but
in terms
Chamber
of
initially was just kind of like
friends,
you're assigned to
mhm.
this. It wasn't even like a real
Yeah,
friend.
exactly. It
In a
wasn't even like
weird
a real friend.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's like he gets a better friendship with Chamber as the series goes along as well. Like he developed so much himself that it helped everything around him.
Exactly, and then you know you can always be that person that is like, because Chamber is very much, I mean, he's an AI, and we're in the age of where Alexa and Siri control our lives.
I know, isn't it so bizarre? And this show was done like
It's
what, like 10 years ago? It's so
years
crazy.
ago. Yeah, and I'm just thinking, man, I mean, can I even compute there being a day where, you know, me and Alexa hold conversations?
When we become the buds.
Well, exactly what, and then, but at the same time, that's a scary idea, right? That's a scary idea to have like these
Totally.
AI just
Yeah.
to rule your lives. But for you know, when you put it in an anime, that's all that Leto knows. Like if you were to take Chamber away, he
Yeah.
truly wouldn't know how to function.
And that even comes up in the show when he's like trying to get a job by himself and Chamber is fine. Like he's a machine, so it's perfect. He can work in that society. But Leto's like, what can I even do?
Yeah,
He even has trouble just fishing.
I guess you don't get a lot of opportunities to fish in space,
it's
right?
it's true. It's not like the space taught him how to do that. I'm being harsh.
It's like, well, but and even that sets this show different from other mecha shows. Is that, you know, in a lot of mecha shows they have those, yeah, humans left Earth, went to other planets, went to the moon,
Mhm.
wherever, and they terraformed it. But in this, like, he didn't go to like a different planet. He was very much just a soldier going, you know, in space.
And the show
Because
does
that's
such a good job with that. There's such a good surprise halfway through the season, where
mhm,
you're like, "What?" He actually starts questioning, like, "Why am I a soldier? Why do I only know like star bases and fighting?" And then he finally finds those historical tapes at the bottom of the ocean, and he finds out,
yeah,
the Hideous are the aliens that he fights in space. He finds out their history and the history of the people who went to space to fight them, and it's such a
mhm,
good turn in the show. It's like so horrific and so wonderful at the same time. He kind of like has an
yeah,
existential crisis right in the middle of it. It's so interesting.
yes, yeah. It's the show really did do a good job with um the storyline and hiding, like, I, you know, when you watch a show and you're like, oh yeah, like
You can
you
kind of
you're
see the
following, you
markers, what's happening.
see where it's going, like almost to the point where, you know, like certain genres get to be predictable, you know,
Yeah, that's where all the
kind of
tropes
like,
come from. Yeah.
yeah, kind of like sports anime. You're like, there's always going to be this one kid that's like passionate about the sport he wants to play, but he's not the best player, and so he has to
Yeah,
get better. And
there's
there's
a
a
journey.
competition. There, there's a competition. There's a tournament. You know, so but sitting and watching this, I mean, even in my refresh of watching it, it didn't feel predictable, even though I'd seen it before. I knew it. It was like it was still, um I could still watch it and enjoy it and not go, oh yep, I saw that coming first episode in, you know.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
oh,
It's very surprising. And yeah, I know a lot of people are like, of course mecha shows are about the pilots, and that's true to an extent, but this is kind of more about Leto and experiencing this whole new world. And I love that part of it because the Gargantua and all the people on it, all the extra characters, are so their own ecosystem, and that's so fun to watch because you're kind of an outsider with him watching all of this develop. So I
Yes.
just think it's an exceptional little show in that aspect, and I just like really wanted to talk about it. So when you said that, hey, I know that one, I like that one, I was like, oh, I'm borrowing you for that.
And look, I was just as excited when I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm not kidding, and maybe people have talked about it, and I just never saw it. I've never seen anybody like talking about this show in particular,
Right,
and
like even
like
just like a mention of it, maybe back in the day when it was on, there was more of that, but it's kind of fallen off because we're in this age of like so many anime, classic and new. So it's just nice to
yeah,
find old ones to talk about still.
yeah. I mean, it's so sad when you're like talking about like what the show came. The original run was like what 2013, 2014.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so weird to think about how 2013 is now considered older anime now.
Oh my
And I'm
god.
going, but
I can't handle it. I swear I can't handle it. I remember when Evangelion was new, and now I'm like, oh no, people don't recognize Cowboy Bebop? What's happening?
right? Um, or when they're like watching this oh my god, my nephew. God bless him. My nephew my nephew is he's he, that whole he's in that phase where he's consuming anime without realizing he's consuming anime, and in that
Sure.
I mean he he was like, oh my god, I can't wait for Netflix show One Piece, and I'm going, you know that's an anime, right? You can watch that right now. You don't have to wait for Netflix.
Oh
You
my
can
god, that's
watch that
adorable.
now.
You're like,
And
I can
it's the
help
same
you.
thing with, I can help you. Let me help you. And like they just don't know that. And my nephew was like, "Oh my god, you told me Cowboy Bebop was cool." And I said, "It is cool." And he's like, "I watched what was on." I was like, "Oh god,
Not the
did you
live
watch the live
show.
action?
Oh no.
Not the live show, not the live show." Yeah,
Oh no,
well,
you can steer him in the right direction though, so that'll be all right.
I steered him in the right direction, but it was in trying to steer him in the right direction that I realized, wow, these kids just nowadays. I mean, even those kids, like, sadly, my my niece is she had a kid a couple years ago, and she loves Cinderella the movie.
Oh.
You cannot convince her Cinderella is a cartoon. So it's like, wow, like everybody who's doing something is doing something that's already been done before.
Or
And
yeah,
like
we're in the age of remakes basically.
they think, yeah. And I'm like, well,
It's so
but yeah, God bless.
It's so true though because there's such an access to it online, gone are the days where like you had to get a tape from Japan or you had to go to the back of the comic book store and find
Sure.
these things.
Oh
So,
boy, yeah, and then there's even those mythical shows where even I was like, oh my god, I wanted to see this, and now you can. Anime was not always easy to consume.
it
It
wasn't
was,
it wasn't easy to consume, nor was it easy to find someone else to consume it with.
yeah, you- you're just stuck with whatever you can get your hands on. Between like 2017 and today, it just seems like there's just so much of it out there now,
It
but
seems
there's
like an
also so
ever
much
constant flow.
slow. But there's also other things out there now, like in terms of entertainment, that it kind of gets drowned out, and you're like, gosh, you guys don't know what you're missing. There's so much out there
Yeah,
now.
that's
You
true. It
could
was
do
so
this,
specific before. Yeah.
but you're focused on all this other stuff, and it's just I keep going, man. We're gonna they're gonna ride that wave and take take for granted what they got, and then heaven forbid there be a day where it goes back to being hard to consume anime, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's almost like because there's so much media at your fingertips and it's to them anime is just kind of mixed in with it. Like of course that's just another thing you watch versus like in our day like we said it was hard to get a hold of, so you were very specifically an anime fan or, a total weeb, that moniker. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we kind of have more of an identity with it having grown up with it for so long, like both you and I. It's just been in our lives for years as that very specific thing, whereas now it's kind of mixed in. But I like that it's kind of mixed in because now it's much more commonplace, and I like that people can talk about it more normal than being like, oh, you're into that.
Oh yes, I remember those days where like you were like, I mean, if you said it loud and proud, you definitely got some looks.
You were
You
you were
might have gotten
pigeonholed as the weirdo.
you might, but and nowadays you say you like anime, and everybody's like, oh yeah, they're usually gonna pop off with a couple of shows they like.
I love that I can run into people at like half off books or whatever, and one or two people that I run into in the anime section or the manga section, and they're like, "What are you into?" And I'll be like, I just read JoJo's Part 7," and they're like, "Cool, cool. I need to read that." Like it's recognizable now in a certain way.
Yes, and it's where it's a cool thing where you got some companies that are bringing back some of the older stuff, because
Oh yeah, I love that.
now you're like, oh yeah, you're consuming all this stuff, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with the new stuff. I'm not dissing the new stuff, but it's such a enriched culture and history that you definitely want to, like, with companies bringing those and like rescuing older stuff, or even bringing it over here for the first time. It's now I get to go here, that's some great stuff you consumed. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's so nice.
Try this little gem.
Yeah, the fact that people were so excited for like Aim for the Ace and Gunbuster and just really, really classic series, it just warms my heart. Like it's so cool. At the same time, it almost feels like, wow, now that everybody's into it, they don't recognize how special it is almost. But again, I just like that everyone's into it, so it's really good in my mind. As strange as the experience is talking to like someone way younger than you it is now.
Right, yes. And then I was thinking about the characters in this show.
Yeah.
And okay, so I really do like Leto's friendship with Amy, and how that started. But I have to say, some of the names for the characters were just,
I know.
I was just like, it was like, oh my gosh. And I didn't research it because I wondered if it was like purposely picked like that, because I mean,
almost like they're supposed to sound so otherworldly in a way, or just so different from our average names today.
Yeah, so you're like Pinion.
It's
like just
it's just they said his name Pinion. I was like, what is Pinion?
Yeah. I was like, what's, like, are they trying to say onion? Like, what's this? Or like Bevel? Like,
yeah.
Is that supposed to be Babel?
I don't know. It's so funny, and it just might be how naming conventions are in a lot of anime, where they're either like super, super Japanese or like a very foreign American or English sounding name. And then you get your mecha shows where they're like, Tamiya set the record for crazy names in Gundam. We can do anything.
Yeah, but this show also has like, so you got like Amy, and that's a
that's a normal name,
nice normal name, and you got like Joe and Grace. So I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Like,
I guess it was just a mix. I think they just wanted a nice mix, and I don't know if they pulled the names probably out of the manga. So maybe that was just an inclination of the manga author. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I just always wondered, I was like, man, I wonder if this was like intentional, like whether it be from the manga that this was intentional, that the names just be like almost to the point where you're like wondering, okay,
I'm curious.
Were they trying to say onion and it just came out Pinion, or were they trying to say Babel and it came out bevel. Like,
I just love that
is it
Pinion's
done on
name really
purpose?
gets to you. You're just, for some reason, you're really focused on Pinion.
But you know what? I think he's like probably one of my favorite characters though.
Oh,
So
he's great. The way he kind of like maneuvers around people, the way he was like, Leto, you want to kill these hideous, right? Well, there's those weird squids in the sea. You want to come kill them? It'll help me. And then, he works alongside like the leaders of Gargantua to like maneuver his ships to go diving for treasure so he can make money and kind of reclaim his brother's memory. Like,
yeah,
he comes off as like a side character in the beginning because he wants, to use Chamber for parts and stuff. But he's so interesting. The fact that he's such a good like engineer and he learns the alien technology while also just kind of being a silly kind of man. Like he's
yes,
silly, but he's
he
also very interesting.
he is. He is silly. Um, but yeah, I think that's why his name just always struck me, is because he's also just one of my more favorite characters. And that like, I wouldn't say like I rank him above like Leto or anything. It's just like, if you exclude the main characters, right? Like
Right, yeah, the main
he'd
point.
just be he would just be my favorite character. And then
Yeah, I
he
totally get what you're saying because it's like he's a side character, yes, but he's so important to the story. He's also so like interesting. You could almost just have a show about him. And I love side characters that could potentially do that, you know what I mean?
yeah, but also because of like him and what his overall goals are, that's also part of what maybe like go, wow, there should be more to this. Like it shouldn't stop at this it shouldn't stop at 13 episodes. Like where's the rest of it?
I
Like you
I
just think that, oh, they're
completely
gonna
get
go on.
that. Yeah. Well, it was interesting because the series, winds up and it's got a nice solid ending. I really appreciate that. But I kind of
Yes.
wanted a couple more episodes that were like epilogue episodes. Like, what did Pinion do after that? What did that like crazy pirate leader do after this? Did she join Gargantia? Is she hanging out there? It seemed like it at that last episode. Um, just
Yeah.
they had these cool human characters that you got very attached to, and I think that speaks to a show when a show finishes up and you're like, but I want a little bit more. I want an epilogue. I want like some more resolution with them. Like I get that the main points of this story are done, but what is Pinion doing after this? Is he just back on Gargantua like usual?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could be thankful for the fact that this show did have an ending. Like, whereas I felt like it could go on, it wasn't like I felt like it could go on because it was just so left over, like it didn't finish. Like, and
Yeah, exactly.
there's been shows like that where it just didn't finish. Like it banked on getting a second season, or it banked on it being more popular or something, and it just didn't,
Yeah.
whatever the reasons, just didn't pan out. So in that sense, yes, the show did do the whole story and the plot points, and it had an ending. But man, oh man, did I want it to keep going. And it felt like it
Yeah.
had the material to keep going. It did feel like it had the material to keep going.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially like even like disregarding, what was going on with the Galactic Force and everything. You could have kept things going with just what was happening on all the ships. And I totally get
Yes.
what you're saying about shows that don't quite end right. Like I just finished watching Hatenko Yugi, and that show is only 10 episodes long, but it ends on a cliffhanger and then nothing else ever happened with that show. And it's like, oh,
Oh my god.
also that's just not a very good show, people. I just heads up, I'm not like recommending it or anything. That
No, no,
show
no,
that
no.
show has its own
Don't,
problems. But
don't, this is like, don't go by that show. Yeah, I get it. I've done that where like I got a show, and um I think I put it on my Twitter one time, and then I had somebody in my DMs going, "Oh my god, you said that you got this show." And I went and got it, and I feel like I've been robbed. And I was
oh
like, well,
no.
first off, I'm so sorry, but I said I bought it. Like that's the whole point. And
Yeah.
this is why I don't do too much posting of like hauls on my Twitter, because just
Yeah.
because I haul it doesn't mean I'm like, a
Oh,
lot of the times I
totally.
get it because I haven't seen it. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's my hauls are so weird because it's like half things that like, oh, I want to own this so I get to it and watch it someday, and the other things are like, I've watched this like 15 times and I love it. So not everything is a
right.
recommend from me. It's more like this is difference
Yeah,
between buying and recommending, basically.
yes, and but oh my god, there's been those shows where I've been burned, and I'm
Oh, I
like,
know.
wow, I didn't get an ending.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when you mentioned the ending, like an unsatisfying ending, that's just one I recently watched that I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of other things wrong with that show. That's a whole nother episode,
Ugh,
but
yeah,
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 there's plenty that people can point to and be like, I wish that. And the thing is, I don't know if the Oceanus manga ended and it went off that ending, or if this made its own ending. I can't say because I didn't look into it. But just
yeah.
for the anime, this is a recommendation. It has a decent ending. It's not so many episodes that it feels like you're going to burn out on it. It's a very good, concise show. So I just thought it would be great for us to talk about it.
Yeah, 13 episodes. It's easy to consume. And they were good episodes, good story.
Yeah, even episode
Excellent,
to episode,
excellent
you get
characters.
something. Yeah,
Yeah. And the characters, like, for me, the story was great. The plot's great. Like, every episode, like, feeling like I always was getting a little more nugget all the
yeah.
time was great. But for me, what kept me going next episode were just the characters in and of themselves.
It's true. You really fall in love with them. Like you come for the story, but you kind of stay for the characters and those
And for
little
the characters.
interactions that they have. Very good little
So
interactions
it's a definite recommend for me.
from
Um,
both of us. Oh my gosh, now that I actually have you here, I also wanted to talk a little bit about One Piece, specifically One Piece Strong World.
oh my gosh. Okay, yes. Yes.
Because last time we chatted, I mentioned that, hey, if you liked Stampede and everything else, I was like, man, you should check out Strong World sometime. And you did, so I just really wanted to hear, like, your thoughts on it.
I like going into movies blind. Not,
Sure.
there's, sometimes people are like, "Hey, where does this fall into like episode, like where could
Where
it
is
possibly
this
fit in
canon?
episodes?
Where does it fit in the timeline? What's the
Where does
basic
it fit?"
gist of it? Right.
I want to say it took me until there's this scene where like they're all these giant bugs, and they're for Robin and Frankie and Brooke are walking through, and I just thought it was so typical of Robin being thrown in ruins because she's
Yeah,
an
it's perfect.
archaeologist. So I didn't even realize like what the context of where they were. I was just like, oh yeah, it's a flooded ruin city. Got you. Cool. It's
Let's roll
typical
with
that
this.
Robin's
Yeah.
there. Let's roll with this. The giant bugs. Okay, they're separated. Obviously, by that time, I realized they were separated. But Brooke was like screaming like a girl. Like, this is my favorite part of the whole movie.
I know
I'm
that scene is
sorry.
so good. It's so beautifully animated too.
He screams like a little girl, and Frankie and Robin turn around, and there's all these ants, right?
The
And
giant
the
monster
ants
bugs.
just the ants just go right past Brooke, and they're like going for Robin and Frankie, and Frankie's like gonna blast them, and Robin's just like, "But Frankie, didn't you already like go get out of your cola?" Like, and he's like, "Oh crap!" and then and takes Brooke a second to realize, like, wait, he's so offended that
Oh
they didn't
right,
want, like, the
I'm
ants
dead.
didn't
They
want
don't
to eat him.
want me.
They don't want me. And they're like, and Frankie's like, they want meat, not a bag of bones.
Aw.
He got so mad that he just obliterated all these ants in
Yeah,
one
when
swing
when
of
Brooke
it.
gets serious.
I'm like, God, Brooke, you know what? I love you. Like, what? Okay, and then he turns around and he goes, "Does this stuff make my butt look big?" And I'm like, oh my God. Like,
Why are we
okay,
Brooke?
Brooke, every time I think I know who my favorite character is.
That's really the basis for One Piece. Like that is such a strong group of characters. Like that crew. there's a reason why I just adore One Piece, and it's the interactions that the crew has, the crazy amount of characters that Oda throws into it, and they all have such distinct personalities and tropes and traits. Like, Shiki is
Yeah,
such an interesting villain in this movie. And I love
yeah,
one of the things I love about this movie is that Shiki wants Nami because she is literally super useful to him and his fleet because of her weather knowledge and the way she can
which
read patterns. He doesn't want her
yeah,
because she's a pretty lady. That's a bonus. He wants her because she's
that
brilliant, and that speaks to how good Luffy's crew is.
there is, and that's the part I was getting to was when I'm like I like going into things blind, and the way the director, I don't know who directed this movie, I should have looked it up, but the way
I'll put
that
it on
they
screen, don't
chose
worry about
to
it.
the way they chose to start this movie out is they you kind of started in the middle, like the opening. You're in the middle of what has already taken place because you have to go back to a few days earlier to figure out what happened, how they ended up where they ended up. So, but I was trying to think of, okay, well, Brooke's here, so it can't be too old, but not as
Yeah,
young as
it's
Stampede.
it's when the crew gets together kind of right before the time skip is basically
Yeah,
when it comes.
and I realized that after Brooke's scene, when it went back to Luffy, I was like, oh, he doesn't have the scar. Great. Okay,
Yep.
I know exactly where I'm at now. Got you. Because if I would have seen Nami first, if I would have seen her first, I would
Yeah.
have known by her hair.
Nami is like the
But they didn't.
perfect marker for if this is pre or post time skip. Yeah.
Luffy, not Luffy. Yeah, give me more Luffy, definitely. But give me more
Always.
Sanji and Give me more Sanji and Usopp freaking out
I know. I know. They're so good in this
together,
movie.
together, because that's not a duo you see get much time together. You
And
don't
they're
see a
so
lot of
good. They're so
Usopp
funny the way
and
they
Sanji.
interact.
There's not a lot, and it's so weird having Usopp be the one to tell Sanji to calm down. I was just like,
Well,
oh
Sanji
my,
hates bugs. He's a
yeah,
refined man.
he is a refined man, but he was also freaking out because
Exactly.
Robin and Nami are not there either, and I'm like, oh my god, like, wait, oh, oh my god, um, are you the same man? Are you the same man?
Yeah, yeah. No, I do remember. Was it Skypiea in the Skypiea arc where Nami and him see bugs and they're freaking out, and Usopp's like, "What is wrong
Yeah,
with you guys?" It's so funny.
yeah.
You can kind of pair off or group any of the main crew, and you'll get good situations or good humor or like real badass energy. Like it's so funny how you can kind of mix and match them, and they play off each other really well.
And that's the thing about, okay, so regardless of whether movies are canon or not, or semi-canon, whatever, that's the great thing about One Piece movies
Uh,
is it's there that you get a lot of these pairings that you don't often get in the show. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying it never happens in the show, but you don't. It's not typical. Normally, the monster three are always together out in front.
sure, yep,
So you don't get a lot of Usopp and Sanji separated together from everybody else. That's not something that happens,
yeah.
and it's the same thing with like in Stampede. They separate, and it's typical that it's usually
It's usually
Usopp
like,
and Nami
yeah,
and
or like
Chopper.
Luffy and Usopp kind of goofing off
Yep,
together.
they all together.
Yeah. I also really like in the
So
movie all the interaction between like Frankie and Brooke. Like you can just kind of pick any direction essentially with them. And it's such a good crew.
it's such a good crew, and this movie, what this movie is it didn't have all the callbacks that Stampede had,
Oh.
and it wasn't as, and because not all those callbacks were there, you had, even though there was like a lot of people in terms of what Shiki was doing and all the pirates being there at Shiki's base, there was a lot of pirates, but it wasn't a lot of people that you were interacting with.
Right. And
It was a more smaller focus of people and a smaller, it was the issue at hand from the One Piece show, like movies that I watched, it's usually cut forward where bad guy moral compass does not align with Luffy's moral compass.
Yeah, that's most of
And
One Piece. You're right.
never in my life did I think I was gonna get a One Piece movie where a bad guy's moral compass was so far off of Luffy's moral compass that it starts out where Luffy only has one issue with this dude, right? At first he was like, "Oh my god, so cool! You're floating, your ship is flying, right?" He's so enamored with
Yes.
Shiki, and then his main problem was Shiki took Nami. A big problem in Luffy's world. And then Luffy finds out that Shiki is responsible for, the stuff going on in the East Blue. And
Yep.
now you're really upset. Now you really, really, really got it upset, Luffy. And you're like, what? Huh? But I never thought I'd get a One Piece movie where Luffy's moral compass and Luffy's enemy is now 100% in line with the Marines.
Yeah. This movie was done back in like 2009, and it's so funny hearing you talk about it because no one thought like Shiki was mentioned in the manga, of course, with Impel Down and stuff, but no one expected that to kind of expand into this. And this movie was a huge deal when it came out. It was the first One Piece film that Oda himself was also going to work on. So this was a big deal. So it's so interesting to hear you, who has experienced One Piece so far past its initial release, still have this kind of reaction to this film.
Yeah, and that I normally I battle OCD, so normally my OCD would not allow me to watch things out of order.
Mm.
So normally I would not have consumed Stampede first.
Right. You would be like, oh, I gotta start at episode 1, I gotta work my way through, I gotta have the background. Yeah.
And I gotta know where these movies fit in, even if they're not canon. I need to know what episodes they go in between, so I'm not like spoiling myself. But I have to say, One Piece movies don't really spoil One Piece the show.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, there's characters from the show, and yeah, obviously if you hadn't seen Water 7 or even Ennis Lobby, you're like, who's this cyborg dude going around? What's going on?
I imagine it's quite a leap to like see early One Piece and then go to one of the films and be like, who the hell is that?
You're like, when did he get a skeleton? But if you paid attention and I'm starting in the manga. I'm on volume 3
Yeah,
now.
you are.
So, but even what I've taken to doing, because I remember tweeting you about it, where I was like, "Wait, was this in the anime? I don't remember this."
It's fun to do a comparison.
I'll read the volume and then watch the episodes that that volume covered, and what I'm noticing is if you were paying attention to Luffy and what he's saying, which you really should. You should be paying attention. You obviously know he goes for the flair. Like, he likes things that are different.
Yeah.
That enthrall him. Frankie, of course, wows him, especially after the 2-year gap. And Frankie's got all his upgrades.
It's so good. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So of course he already said, "Hey, look, need 10." As far as I know, he has 9. Like I said, I'm not caught up into all things Wano. I don't even know if they're done with Wano yet. And I will catch up. I imagine I will catch up to where the most current episode is.
Oh, you will. Don't worry about that. That all takes time, and you'll get there. It's better not to rush it anyway.
I will get there. So current cat only knows of 9, but okay, so he says 10. So if you know Luffy, even if you're just consuming and you're in the early days and you go and you watch a film like one of the movies like Strong World, you know, okay, it's not surprising that he has characters like Brooke on his crew or Frankie on his crew, because that's just how Luffy is. The design of the Sunny shouldn't be shocking.
Exactly.
That it fits in line with things that draw Luffy.
Luffy
So
is
it's
so energetic and he's so honest about what he likes. And it's so fun to watch.
And with Luffy, he doesn't care to be different.
That's just natural to him.
He didn't even blink, like, over Shiki having swords for legs. Like,
no.
didn't care, did not care at all. He was just like, "Oh, you're cool," and then it was like, "Oh man, I don't like you. You took my crew from." And for Luffy, and the thing that always is really good about any One Piece film, but in this particular, what I really, really, really loved a lot was two things. This movie it had everything to do with Nami, because that was her talent that Shiki was after.
Yeah, it really, really was focused on Nami in a way of... I wouldn't say that people dislike Nami. People love Nami. But in a way, Nami being a navigator and being so weather knowledgeable, people kind of look at that role and kind of go, is that really important? Whereas if you are into sailing or into pirate history, you know that that's very important.
Very important.
And this movie really emphasizes that and how cool it is that as a woman she's doing that.
Yes, and she's not just a pretty face, right? So, like, it's all about Nami, but it's also about Luffy knowing so well what he's capable of, and what offends Luffy is when he feels like his crew didn't know that he would work it out. And in the end, when Nami comes out and they're on the Sunny, Luffy's pouting. And he's pouting and he's holding this thing and he's
full
like,
child mode.
What's the deal with this? What's the deal with this? And it takes her aback. She doesn't know what his problem is. And of course he's Luffy. Of course he didn't stick around to hear the whole damn message.
Didn't listen to the whole dial. And
the whole dialogue.
Yep.
The thought on his mind was, what's with this message? What I was just hungry, I'm just hungry, right? Like, I would have beat him. And she just looks at him and was like, well, yeah, I know that.
So it's so funny how Luffy is like so okay with like betrayals or people being sneaky. He takes them as they are and he's just like, well, that was weird. Well, anyway, you're still with me.
You're still mine. Luffy, his goal hasn't changed. He wants to be king of the pirates. Do I really honestly think that he wants the riches of the world? No, I don't think that's not what Luffy is really after. If you really want to, the best indicator of what's treasure to Luffy is what he gets upset about. So he gets upset when somebody separates him from his crew. He got real pissed off when Buggy messed with Shanks' hat. He even said in that episode, and it stuck out more in the manga, that whole scene, that hat is his greatest treasure.
Yeah, exactly.
So when Luffy says, I want to be the king of the pirates, he's not saying I want all the wealth and riches in the world.
He wants his people and his freedom, basically.
Yeah. Will he take the title? Yeah, because he feels he needs to. He feels, and I'm going to emphasize this because that's not the promise Shanks made. He feels that he has to become the king of the pirates to be worthy to face Shanks.
Yeah, totally. Oh, definitely.
That's Luffy's feelings, not what Shanks said. That's not even the promise Shanks made when he gave him the hat. It was become a great pirate and return my hat to me.
Exactly.
Luffy already fulfilled those check boxes. Really, he is a great captain. He's got his crew fully trust him, even though they know he's kooky and wacky and scatterbrained, and
a bit of a weirdo.
But he has his crew. He has the devotion of his crew. He has his ship. And here's the thing about Luffy is, and I was looking at it, he really is truly a selfish character. Like everything, but it's endearing. So a lot of what Luffy sets out to do ends up benefiting others.
He's not malicious when he's being like that. He almost comes off more as like determined.
It's determined. Yes. So it's not like Punk Hazard. Great example. They were there. They weren't there to rescue kids.
It was just a cool new island to him.
It was a cool new island, and then some bad guy put them all in cage, and he got pissed off, and then he got out, and then it was. But Luffy didn't set out to go to that island to do any good. I mean selfish in that he's still doing what he wants to do. That's going to get him to his goal.
Luffy is true chaotic good that way. Mm-hmm.
Along the way, he does good. So this movie is you see a lot of him being selfish. He wants he's like, oh, that's cool, and oh, I'm making the decision to go back to the East Blue because nobody can mess with the East Blue. That benefits other people.
Absolutely.
But he had a selfish desire for it, right? Like, that's his hometown. That's his place, right? And so it wasn't a let's go out and save the world type be hero things. Luffy isn't setting out to be a hero.
It's so funny to hear you describe it like that, because that's not how I would describe the movie, but that is exactly what it is. Like, you're not wrong in anything you're saying, and it's so true.
Like, that's another thing about One Piece movies is from one person to the next, what they take from the movie, it's not going to be wrong, right? There's that discussion of a lot of the times I found myself doing this, right? In the last talk that we had about One Piece, I told you, man, I don't like, it's strange because you think you should be rooting for the Marines, right? Yeah. You think piracy is bad, right? But you're just rooting for Luffy and his team. And when I was watching this movie, it dawned on me that Luffy isn't setting out to be a hero. Does he often come off as a hero? Does he often do good? Yes, he does. That one with the God, what do they call them? The dragons?
Yeah,
they're not really dragons.
The celestial dragons.
Yeah. He was there to go on the next half of his journey. He didn't team up with Law and Kid because he was setting out to be a good guy beating these bad. If what they were doing hadn't offended Luffy's moral compass, Luffy would not have gotten involved.
Right, exactly. So, and I think you bring up such a good point. One Piece and Luffy and that crew in particular, you're watching people who are operating on their own moral compass. They're not operating on that society's moral compass. They're not operating on this is what needs to be followed, this is what's right. They're assessing situations and deciding for themselves. And in a lot of ways, like you're saying, he chooses what we view as right. You know, he questions authority. He questions why things are like that. He knows what he trusts and believes and loves, and that's his crew, and that's his journey. And I think that's kind of the endearing qualities to One Piece, and I think Strong World is a good example of it.
And that's what I got out of it, was like, in the opening, when you first see Luffy and you realize he's separated, you don't have any indication at this point that Nami was taken, because Luffy's first words are, I gotta find them.
Yeah.
It's not, I gotta find Nami. I gotta find them.
He needs his whole crew, baby.
Oh, true. He needs the whole crew, and you know, he gets sidetracked along the way, you know, like watching bugs fight each other. He's like, wow, that's okay.
True
He's
ADD
like, this
moment.
is strange. He's just like, okay, well, all right. And then even when he fought, like, he accidentally runs into Nami. He wasn't like, it was he's trying to look for them, and then he gets sidetracked by all these other things that he just accidentally finds his crew. Like,
Right, yeah.
it's
It works out in the end.
This movie, it's almost to the point of this movie where he's like, it would have been faster for Luffy to just not be looking for them.
Pretty much, and that's pretty constant with him, yeah.
Yeah, when he's not looking for them, he finds them. But
Yeah.
there's a difference. Like, okay, I know I'm saying this right. Wrong. I'm saying this wrong. So, gosh dang it.
But don't worry.
Sabiodi, the acapella, on there, when his crew gets taken from him, there's this desperateness in it, right? He's frantic. But in this movie, he's not frantic about being separated from even when they're, because like they're all separated, they're not all together, and then they get together, and then they go after Shiki together. There was never, but then he split them up. He's like, you two go look for them, and then he goes after Shiki, and so they're separated. There's nothing of that desperateness, right?
Luffy pretty much has complete trust in his crew, even when they're like by themselves. He knows that he's picked out, like basically in a way, handpicked the best people, and even no matter how they act or what they might do in a certain situation, he knows that they can pull it out and come back to him in the end. And it's a complete trust thing that you don't normally get from people, which also makes Luffy fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's very fascinating. So like even in that, like there's none of that whole panic at being separated. And when they come back, even in Stampede, like there wasn't that desperateness when they were off doing their own thing. But you could tell that Luffy was always very much aware of where his people were in Stampede. Like
he almost feels like a better version of a captain in Stampede. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like losing his crew and being separated for 2 years made him a better captain, because while he's not fretting, he's not fretting anymore. He's not careless. Like in the early days of the series, he was rather careless with the crew. Only because he just automatically was like, no, you could do this. No, you could do this. Almost to the point where, you know, he doesn't realize that they're not all monsters. I mean, Zoro and him, and even Sanji are like freaking monsters. You're like,
there's a reason. God. There's a reason they're called the Monster Trio.
The Monster Three. Yeah, you're right. So you're just like, oh my God, like it's not carelessness because he doesn't care. It was just that he never was aware of them and what they could and couldn't handle. He just had that trust, like, hey, no, I picked you, you're gonna do this. Prior to watching Strong World, I would not have said that Luffy in that respect had grown at all.
Right, yeah, totally.
But in watching this movie, I realized that he was slowly growing. There was improvement.
Yeah, and that it was kind of just gradual.
It was just gradual. I mean, even kind of after like Skypiea, like you noticed him take a little bit more care, but definitely after Enies Lobby.
Oh, I think that was a big turning point for him as a captain.
As a captain, because in that case, you know, Robin chose to leave. Like she put herself behind that great big wall. You know, she trapped herself. And then you had Usopp's little rebellion because, you know, he didn't agree with the decisions
about going Mary.
The going Mary. So I don't think that I properly saw the growth in in him being a captain until I went from the extreme of Stampede, where he was a really good captain. Like, he can engage in a fight and not be panic stricken that they were separated, which is what I
Right.
saw in the in the actual anime series where they were separated and he was panicked. Like, every time one more disappeared, he was just panicked to the point where he just collapsed, right?
Oh my
And
god,
you're
and
like,
it's
holy
such a
shit.
striking scene. Like I still get chills about that.
So sad. Me too. I'm just like, man, you're like, go back, go back, go back.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
afraid. No, go back. um, but so to go from Stampede, where you see the growth, because Stampede is after the time skip. So you're like, you see that growth, and you see he's aware of what's going on, capable of functioning and doing what he needs to do, and still trusting, still having the trust in him, in his crew, but the care to know, hey, are they, like, what's going on with them? Okay, Usopp's gonna be okay, he's good now, all right, I can focus here.
Exactly.
To going to Stronghold, like Strong World, where you're like, it's definitely an improvement, right? It was definitely an
Yeah, you've
improvement, and
kind of gone back
I
to
was
where
just
he was in the beginning, and it was
getting,
crystallized in that movie, basically.
yeah, and I was just like, wow, I remember early episodes where he laid it out. He was like, first mate, and he never actually, and this is something that I don't think I realized until yesterday. He never actually set out to make Zoro his first mate. Zoro was just that everybody delegated him the first mate, right?
It was more like Zoro was just super interesting to Luffy.
Yeah, it was. He picked Zoro first, but he didn't actually say, "You're my first mate."
No, it just sort
Right?
of naturally became that, and it makes sense to me. I think that's how it would go.
Yeah, it just so you had that, but then he's like, the next thing I need is a navigator, and then the next thing I need is a sniper, and then the next thing I need is a cook, and the next thing I need is this. And so he's just ticking all these boxes off, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
you're and I was watching Strong World, and I was like, um it was yesterday, and I just finished volume 3 of the manga, and I was like, man, 3 things clicked. One, Luffy's moral compass is very much based off of Shanks' moral compass. He really, 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 Shanks really, I don't even think it's an idol. I don't even think he looks at Shanks as an idol so much as Shanks is the man that Luffy has placed on this, that's pedestal of, that's what a man should be, that's how a captain should be, that's how a friend should be, right? He's that father figure, idol into one, and he modeled his crew after Shanks. So, like, he when he's getting beat up by the mountain bandits, and one of the bandits points a gun at Shanks, the first image you get is Shanks just saying, "Hey, it's not safe to point guns," and
Right.
then his sniper just blows him away, right? So and Shanks' second is a really skilled swordsman. He needs a swordsman. So you're like, wow, he's just literally modeling his crew after what Shanks' crew is. But he picked the best, what he thought were the best ones of Shanks' crew, because he only
Absolutely.
needs 10. He only needs 10. Like, they are worth their weight in gold. But I don't think it clicked for me just how much Luffy's moral compass he modeled after what he felt Shanks's moral compass was.
Yeah.
Because what Luffy gets upset about is in the beginning. So when he was a 7-year-old kid, he got so mad that Shanks didn't fight back at the bandits when he shattered a bottle over him.
Yep.
He was like, dude, I'm gonna go find myself a real role model. To the point of now in Strong World, even things that are said doesn't react the way he would you think that he would have prior, right? So
It's almost
like
like he had a level of control he learned.
so
Yeah.
he learned. It's like he's modeling himself. He's like, okay, how would Shanks handle this situation? What would Shanks do? And I just don't think I ever really thought about it. And maybe it's because I just like Shanks, and so I'm just placing so much story to be about him, and maybe it's not. But just going back as somebody who wasn't here from day one, somebody who just recently got into One Piece and who's just recently read the manga, I'm seeing a lot of, oh wait, that makes sense because Shanks has a sniper.
Yep.
Shanks has a swordsman. Shanks has a really good cook. You're like, this all makes sense. Oh yeah, no, Luffy got to a point where he didn't just randomly go into a bar and like beat the whole crowd over a difference of opinion. Because Shanks didn't. So it as somebody new coming in and experience this all in one go and not having to play the wait game.
Yeah.
That's just what I was noticing. And then it clicked on me when we first got out of the time skip, is where I felt that the crew had absolute trust in Luffy. And that's not true. I'm going to take that back because I'm going back and I'm looking at Strong World, and they had absolute knowledge. They all they knew. Robin, I felt like Robin's choice to leave and let herself be taken to Enies Lobby was because she just didn't understand that Luffy could make it work, protect her. So she didn't have that trust. Usopp didn't have the trust with the going married with the decisions that Luffy was making.
Right.
They all questioned Brook joining the crew. So
it's interesting to hear you speak about that, because you're like seeing the development as you go back, and that's why I think it's really good to go back and revisit media and kind of relearn it in a way, and you're like, oh my god, I see this in a whole new angle.
Normally I would tell you I don't, because of my OCD, I don't like watching things out of order. But in this case, I don't think if I would have watched Strong World first, I don't think before Stampede, I don't think I would have appreciated Strong World the way I do right now.
Oh man, that's so satisfying to hear. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. And it's like making me happy to hear how you reacted to it and what you've seen. And you're totally right. You know, I sometimes, because it's been such a long time, I forget what an impact Shanks was on Luffy. And you bringing it up, I'm like, God, it's so true. Oh, I feel like I had forgotten that, but God, it is so true. And it's so great how that sets up and works out as Luffy goes through his adventure. And I want people to be able to find you, so go ahead and let people know where they can find you, my dear.
Oh gosh, wow. What is my Twitter handle?
Kit Kat About All.
All that. Yeah, okay. Kit Kat About All, and then my YouTube, which I don't put anything on YouTube. I keep saying one day I'll make a movie. It's just Katarina Zavala. At Katarina Zavala.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my place. I would say that I have an Instagram, but it's basically dead and out for the count.
Yeah, mine won't let me log in right now. So I'll fix that at some point. But anyway, yeah. I think we should cut it there. What do you think?
Yep.
Oh, perfect.
It's perfect. That's
Yay.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for being on, and I'm going to steal you to have a One Piece Red discussion once we get that in and going. God, it's so funny that both of ours are coming in so soon.
I know, I got the notification. And I was
so
like,
excited.
I was like, oh my god, already? I thought I was going to have to wait forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Again, this is Valkay Chats. I'm valkayink. This is at Kit Kat About All. There we go. I almost messed that up for you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Yay. That's it.